Why don't you bring them on and let's get the show on the road.
All right, please make welcome the ETSU Bluegrass Pride Band.
It takes a worried man to sing a worried song. It takes a worried man to sing a worried song. I'm worried now, but I won't be worried long. Well, I went to the river and I laid down to sleep. I went down to the river and I laid down to sleep. I went down to the river and I laid down to sleep. I woke up and had shackles on my feet. It takes a worried man to sing a worried song. It takes a worried man to sing a worried song. It takes a worried man to sing a worried song. I'm worried now, but I won't be worried long. What's gonna be my fine? Well, I asked that old judge, what's gonna be my fine? I asked that old judge, what's gonna be my fine? 25 years on the Rocky Mountain line. It takes a worried man to sing a worried song. It takes a worried man to sing a worried song. It takes a worried man to sing a worried song. I'm worried now, but I won't be worried long. I got 25 links of chains wrapped around my leg. I got 25 links of chains wrapped around my leg. I got 25 links of chains wrapped around my leg, and each one bears the initials of my name. It takes a worried man to sing a worried song. It takes a worried man to sing a worried song. It takes a worried man to sing a worried song. I'm worried now, but I won't be worried long. I'm worried now, but I won't be worried long.
Well, thank you so much. Some of these people here are faculty. Dan Boner on the guitar, J.P. Mathis on the banjo. These young ladies, Sarah Needham from Maryland, Leona Tokutake from Tokyo, Sarah Cole from Auchmithi in Scotland, Travis Houck from Chilhowie, Virginia, and Robert Trapp from Tallahassee, Florida. There are so many students. This is one of the sections of band class. We have so many students this semester. There are 14 sections of band class. I'd like to ask some of the young ladies if they'd come and play. Jessica, why don't you grab a fiddle and come join us if you can? And I think I saw Catherine Parham here somewhere too. If you've got your fiddle, come join them for these if you have time to do it. A couple of numbers that Tater's taught them to play. Leona, or Jessica, and all of you gather around, and let's do first the Lonesome Moonlight Waltz, and then after that we'll do another number. started talking about this a few months ago. Danny Clark and Sarah Needham and JP, Randy Sanders, Robert Boland, and I were sitting in a room together just talking about it. And we really didn't know how it could come together. We knew it wanted to. We knew we wanted to do it together. And we called Doug Hutchins, and Doug said yes, that he felt sure that he wanted to do this for Tater, and he knew that the Bluegrass boys would all want to do it for Tater, everyone who could. And I think it's remarkable the wonderful response that we've had, and people who wanted to come and.
Bobby Hicks is going to play Prosperity Junction.
Oh, good, good. Yes, thanks. Good. Well, I think it's wonderful that all the response. If you add up the total years of experience and talent that's going to be here on the stage in a few minutes, it's just remarkable. And yeah, we'd like to ask Bobby Hicks if he would be willing to come play this next number with us. No, he said he ain't going to do it. It's maybe before we're asking all the Bluegrass boys to come out, but we'd love it if you'd come play this with our students. Tater.
I hope I still can.
I don't think I have any doubt, because one of the great fiddlers in the world, if it's bluegrass music or country or Texas. Western swing, whatever, Bobby Hicks. And would you? We're thrilled you might come play this with us. You reckon?
Well, you're putting the pressure on me today, ain't you?
That's right, because we're going to ask Leona Tokutaki if she'd come and start us off, maybe you and she together, and then everybody join you for
I
this
tell you,
number.
that many pretty girls around me, I don't know if I can play or not.
Leona, come, tell people something about yourself. How did you come to ETSU to study bluegrass music?
Well, actually, my dad plays country guitar, and also we have several bluegrass festival in Japan also. And I had a friend who came to ETSU maybe 4 years ago.
Taro Inoue.
Taro,
Yes.
he plays Mandarin, and
Yes.
he told me about this program.
How would you like to play this, to kick this off with Bobby Hicks?
I'm a little bit nervous.
Prosperity Special. so very much. And let me say how pleased I am to see Lois Tate here. Also, Lois, thank you so much for coming. All right, please make welcome the Bluegrass Boys.
Bill Monroe always started the shows this way, and this is the way we start our reunions. Hit it, boss. Yes, sir. Howdy, howdy, howdy. The Bluegrass Boys are proud to be here, for a fact. What we're going to have for this afternoon is going to have a few tunes and a whole bunch of tales. David Deese, would you come up and kind of get us started a little bit? Now, we've got some guys that rode the bus. We had some guys that rode the car. Some of these guys even rode the truck, I think, when they were members of the Bluegrass Boys. A lot of times we've worked this up in Rosine, Kentucky since 2000. For a few years there, and what we do is we just share a few things, tell a few stories, and then lead into a tune. David worked with Bill in 1961. Before that, he worked with Arthur Smith, 62, I'm sorry. He worked with Arthur Smith. He followed Don Reno on that job. Came on and worked with Bill, followed Don Reno again. When Reno and Smiley split up, he followed Don Reno again. Don died a few years ago, and we're sure glad that you haven't followed him now.
I ain't ready to follow him this round.
Tell us a little bit about your time with Bill Monroe and the Bluegrass Boys there, David.
Okay, number one, he called on me first because he knows I'm shy and bashful and can't never think of anything to say, so they wanted to get that part over with, okay? Is that all right?
That's all right.
Okay. During the time I was with Bill during the early days of early years of in the 60s, and at that time we traveled in a station wagon. We weren't as fortunate as the later groups that got to travel in the buses and so forth. And everybody took a turn at driving, and everybody took a turn at making the sandwiches for the rest of the guys, the rest of them in the group. And this was during the time when there wasn't Hardee's and McDonald's and all those places, no refrigerators for in the cars, so therefore you couldn't afford the luxuries of mayonnaise and mustard and stuff like that. So you just stopped at a little country grocery store and got you a loaf of bread and a half a dozen slices of hoop cheese and a half a dozen slices of rag bologna, and you just took a slice of it and stacked it up, the driver got the first one, and then the shotgun rider got the second one, and then you got what was left. But that's the way we traveled, and usually the bass fiddle was on top, providing it wasn't raining. If it started raining, you brought it inside. And therefore, the ones in the back seat, the ones on the driver's side leaned this way, and the ones on the other side leaned that way. So when you got to the show you were doing, well, the first half hour you stood funny. They thought you was crippled. But it worked out, and money was sort of slim at that time, but then at least we were working several days a week, and a lot of the groups folded during that time. This was during the time when rock and roll had sort of done some major damage to country music and to a lot of the bluegrass, but we were able to still continue to work. Not all that much, but it was enough to survive on. And we were bluegrass musicians, and at the time didn't know any better. We didn't realize that we could have got out and made an honest living and made a little bit more money. But an incident, and a lot of these fellows up here now, they're in the same boat that I was in. When I started picking, I didn't have anything to wear hardly at all, except a pair of bib overalls and a pair of brogans. And after only 50, I've been in the business 52 years, and after only 52 years, now I have a suit for every day of the week. This is it, I got on. I just thought y'all might need to know that it's a very prosperous business. You have to be dedicated to it. But it was some fun times. I was married at the time. It was a whole lot easier on the guys that were not married. My wife was living in North Carolina and I was living in Nashville. That made things a little bit more difficult. But believe it or not, I got to see her more often with her living in North Carolina than I would have had she lived where we lived in Nashville, simply because we traveled the East Coast more often than we went home. So I would let her know what our schedule was, and she would meet us at different places. Sometimes it was just for a handshake. Sometimes we got to spend a little time together. But it was a great time. I probably couldn't go through it again, but at the time it was a great time, and it was memories that we will never ever forget. I think the rest of them will tell you the same thing. There was a lot of funny things happened, a lot of serious things happened, but one thing about it, you had to be compatible, because the furthest you could get from anybody was like 4 feet, you know. And at the time when I was there, our guitar player Frank Buchanan lives at Spruce Pine, North Carolina. He was the guitar player, and I was the banjo player, and he and I roomed together. So we were literally together 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, the two of us. Spent a lot more time with him than I did my wife.
That was at Mom Up Church's place.
Yeah, we stayed at Mom Up Churches. How many up here lived at Mom Up Churches at one time?
Tell us about Buddy Spiker and Benny Williams working on their fiddles under the porch.
Yeah, Benny Williams was a fiddle player with Bill. Well, he was the second one during the time I was there. And Buddy Spiker, I guess everybody knows Buddy Spiker. If you ever watched the Wilburn Brothers TV shows and all of those kind of shows, Buddy Spiker was always the fiddle player. And at the time I was there. Now here's guys that are on top of the world. They're playing at the Grand Ole Opry every week. And at Mom Up Churches, she had a little cellar. It was not a basement. It was just a dirt floor cellar. It had a shelf around the edge, and one drop light bulb in it, and a little old table. And those fiddle players would go down there and take their fiddles apart and skim the inside, like the top and the back. They would scrape them to make them thinner, make them lighter, and make them more vibrant. And they'd hold it up to that naked light bulb and make sure they wasn't getting any, in too thin places. But they were learning to read music at that time. This was before the dots and the tablatures and stuff like they use now. Now they can write a set of music in their pattern, in their style. They can just do it in a couple of minutes. But back then, this was before that. So they were trying to learn to read music. And hearing grown men, fiddle players on the Grand Ole Opry, and working with everybody in the business, seeing them and hearing them down in that little dirt cellar trying to play Little Brown Jug and stuff like that, following those notes and all. It was quite humorous when you stop to think these people are at the top of the ladder. They're as high as they're ever going to get, being with the groups that they were with and on the Grand Ole Opry. But yet they were down in that cellar trying to learn to read that music. And that was just one of the things that I remember. I was telling Doug about it, and then he later saw
Buddy.
Buddy Spiker. He later ran into him, and he was telling him about me telling that little story. And he said, that's right. He had forgotten that, but I hadn't forgotten it. unimportant things I don't forget. I might forget my name, I might forget my wife's name, but I don't forget them little incidental things. My time's up.
We'll have David come back up a little later. Let's move on up to the 1970s there. Feller, I never will forget, I went down in spring of 70 and was going to, Bill had asked me to come down and talk to him about working with him that summer of 71, excuse me. And I got there that night, and there was a little snowstorm over in Carolina. And I wasn't really sure who was working with the band. And Joe Stewart came in and says, R.C. Harris ain't going to make it. Says it's snowing over there, and he snowed in. I thought, here's my chance. Bill come to me and says, have you got your union card with you? And I'm like, what? Wasn't really sure what a union card was, but I knew I didn't have one. But R.C. had got snowed in over around Asheville. He made it the next night, but Pete Sayers, the English gentleman who was traveling around the country about that time, the only English bluegrass boy we ever had for one night. But R.C., talk to us a little bit about late 1970 and early 1971.
Well, yeah, about a ride. Yeah, that's the funniest story I guess I've got. You have a lot of fun working with Bill, and we were always good friends. And I guess the funniest little story I could tell you about, and I'll try to keep it short. But we'd been down in Mississippi playing, and was on the way back into Nashville, and the bus broke down, and I was asleep. Woke up and looked out the window, and there was Joe Stewart and Kenny, and Monroe Fields out there at the back trying to work on the bus. And I got out, and Bill got out about that time, and I was needing to get back to Carolina for some reason, and a little bit earlier, and so I didn't say anything to Bill. I didn't really say, I need to get back to Carolina, but I guess he knew it. Bill was pretty good about keeping up with stuff. But anyhow, a highway patrolman or state trooper, something, stopped there to talk to Bill, since he saw his name on the bus. And Bill said, you reckon you could get this boy a ride back to Carolina? Said he needs to get into Nashville so he could get into Carolina. I said, reckon you could get him a ride? And the man said, well, yeah, I'll get him a ride. And so I got my banjo, got my suitcase, and got in a car with the patrolman. Well, he just started stopping cars until he caught somebody that was going to Nashville. Now, we was way down in Alabama. So he finally called a man that said, yeah, he was going into Nashville. In fact, he took me all the way into the parking lot, got off the interstate, and took me to my car. And let me tell you the real funny kicker to this. We were riding up the road, and this was, like 3 o'clock in the morning. And he said, I've got a nephew that picks a little bit of bluegrass. Said he's got a little band up around Washington. He's talking about Charlie Waller. This guy's name was Charlie's uncle. But that was really made it odd. Thank you.
Oh, man, I tell you what, we got a couple of Carolina boys. Let's move over to, let's get somebody from up north. Tom Ewan, talk to us a little bit about the time you spent in the band.
Okay, Doug. Let's see. Where do I start? I'll start at the beginning here. When I first came with Bill, I thought I knew all about his music and Bill Monroe, and I auditioned. When I got done with the audition playing, Tater took me aside and he said, "Now, you got to. Sometimes you can't. You have to. No, he doesn't mean everything he says. Now you just got to. He's kind of turned funny, Don't be hurt by anything he says." So I took that advice, and I really appreciate that, Tater. During my 10 years with Bill, I quit a couple of times. One time I was gone and came back and didn't have a place to live in Nashville, so Tater and his lovely wife Lois put me up for several weeks and saved my life. And I really appreciate that. And they finally found a place, Tater found a place for me to live and got me out of there finally. But we had a lot of good times, and we had some rough times. Whenever things got really rough, why, you could always rely upon Tater to lighten our load. And one of the most effective ways he had was to do his imitation of a monkey. And I've spent several years, 10 years, looking at this, and it never failed to lighten the mood. So I'd like to do my imitation of Tater Tate as a monkey. Something like that, isn't it? I put my own little variations in it occasionally. I had a part where I clapped, and we both peeled bananas together, and so. But I think I've run out of time here. Thank you, Doug. Thank you, friends.
Tom Young. Tom, would you do us a tune, sir? When Bill, he always tried to feature folks. Tom was one of the few guys that ever wrote a tune that Bill would let him feature on the Opry and on shows. Could you do Ohio for us? Have got enough guys here that might know that there? But pick and choose and do what you need there. Join in with him there, whoever.
Whoever feels most confident. Ohio, I reckon. Never heard it. Hicks is going to volunteer. That's great. All right. Well, I've traveled round from state to state, to other lands I've been. But there's no place in this old world like the Buckeye State, my friend, where peaceful farmland stretches out as far as the eye can see. From the hills in the south to the lake up north, it's home sweet home to me. Ohio, I'm heading home to you. The road to Columbus will carry me through the sweetest country in the land, that's where I long to go. 'Cause there's nowhere that can compare with Ohio. Now old Kentucky's mighty fine, the home of Bill Monroe. And West Virginia's wonderful and wild, I know you know. And lots of folks, they love to live in sunny Tennessee. But put me in Ohio, boys, that's where I'd rather be. Ohio, I'm heading home to you. The road to Columbus will carry me through the sweetest country in the land, that's where I long to go. 'Cause there's nowhere that can compare with Ohio. If you're still wondering why Ohio's where I'd rather be, my wife and children live there, friends, and they mean the world to me. Mom and Dad still live there too, they say they've missed me so. And the kindest friends that's ever been all live in Ohio. So, Ohio, I'm heading home to you. The road to Columbus will carry me through. You got one? Sweetest country in the land, that's where I long to go. 'Cause there's nowhere that can compare with Ohio. No, there's nowhere that can compare with
Some of the guys never played the tune before, but that didn't seem to bother them. Never seemed to bother Bill when we would do things like that. Randy Franks, come up and talk to us about, now this gentleman, he worked for Bill a while, and then he went off out to Hollywood and spent some time walking around with that old big fellow named Bubba and Carol O'Connor and those guys, and used to just tickle me to death to be able to turn the TV on and say, yeah, I know him. Randy Franks.
Thank you so much, Doug. It's such a pleasure to be here today and on this stage with some of the people that I've admired, especially this gentleman right here. I tell you, my first day as a bluegrass boy, I had come in, Bill had been to Japan. Kenny Baker had just left for the last time. And thanks to Wayne's wife, Sue, and Miss Betty in the office, they reminded Bill to give me a call. And Bill gave me a call, and I got on this plane. I got on a big plane, and then a smaller plane, and then a smaller plane, and even a smaller plane. I was riding with my head on my knees. I was glad I didn't have to go any farther than Yakima, Washington, because I just couldn't have made it with a fiddle. But anyway, the first day we was playing at the Capitol Theater in Yakima, Washington. This was 1984. And I met them on the street. The bus was there. I walked on the bus, and it wasn't a few minutes before Mr. Bill got right down to business. He said, I reckon you know all of my numbers, don't you? I said, well, I know quite a few of them, but I don't know if I can make it all the way through one set, just yet. He said, well, I tell you what, why don't you play the big fiddle, and we'll let Tater play the little fiddle. What do you say to Bill Monroe when he says something like that? I'd never held one of them things in my life. He said, Tater will give you a lesson, and you play the big fiddle. I said, okay. So we get backstage at the theater, and Tater gives me a lesson. He gives me a great big thing of tape, and I put it around both fingers, and we spend 10 minutes. And I learned all I ever needed to know about how to play bass with the Bluegrass Boys. He said, smile a lot. We go out on stage, 75-minute show. And they didn't hold up anything. I mean, that place was packed, people hanging from the rafters, and there I am back there with that bass fiddle that I've smiled. I figured, okay, I'll keep up with this. I'll watch Wayne. Wayne was on the guitar. I'll watch Wayne. I know I can keep up with Wayne. Wayne kept looking back over his shoulder at me and saying, come on, catch up. He didn't say it out loud, but that's what I know he was thinking with them looks he was giving me. But that 75 minutes, it just went just like that. I've never had more fun in my life. Of course, the next time I got to play the little fiddle, then I was much more happier. And Tater helped me smooth those edges out too. But working with Wayne, Tater, and Blake, and Mr. Monroe, some of my best memories. I was a short-lived bluegrass boy, and I'll share you one other story as a reason why. I had just started college when I went to work with Mr. Monroe. And he had a meeting with my parents in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. I was still in my teens, and I just started college. First one from our family to ever go to college. And they went out to dinner, and I didn't know about this till years later. They discussed my future over dinner. Mr. Monroe said, I'd like him to go to work for me. And they said, we'd like him to go to college. They won. So he never told me about the conversation until years later. He came up to my mom one day and said, I think we did right. He's a good man. He's got a good education. And that meant more to me than anything. I had to get him and Mom to explain it to me, and they did, and that meant more because he respected my parents so much that he knew if he'd said, you want to go to work, I'd have been there in a flash. so I could have learned everything and anything that I could have. But the greatest pleasure of all is, even though I had a short stint, he always brought me back to make guest appearances with the Bluegrass Boys, and I was always honored to play some small role through all those years. So thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Gentleman who was one of the real pushers of bluegrass with Bill. He really, I think he probably leaned against Bill as much as anybody as far as trying to learn and really appreciate and digest the music. Butch Robbins, talk to us about your times.
Thank y'all. I had a little different experience with Monroe in my education than Randy did. I had gone to the first Bluegrass Festival in Fincastle, Virginia, specifically with the idea I was going to wind up with a job as a bluegrass boy. Lamar Greer was trying out that weekend as well. And when Mr. Bill and my dad spoke about that thing, Mr. Bill was my dad's greatest hero in the world, and Daddy wanted me to go to work for him when I was 15 years old. Or actually, I think I was 16 at that point. And Mr. Bill said, leave him in school till he graduates and I'll give him a job. And my dad sent a graduation announcement to Mr. Bill. And I was working a part-time job in a laundry in Radford, Virginia. I had a job down there delivering clothes and, you know, a part-time job in the evenings after school and everything. And about 2 weeks before I graduated from high school, the phone rung down there one Saturday morning. And there was a voice on the other side, hey, is this Butch Robbins? And I said, yes, sir. And he said, well, are you ready to come to work for me on the Grand Ole Opry? And I was sort of shocked, but to make a long story short, I said, yeah. And that was my first experience going down working for Mr. Bill. I had my dreams shattered. I worked a week up there at Bean Blossom, and I think I published the W-2 form in my book. I made $52 for that first Bluegrass Festival. But as Doug said, you know, I heard the old man say one time that he'd like to sing, I like to sing with that Mac Wiseman because I can mash again his voice. I can sing again him. And with Monroe, if you ever wanted to hear music out of him, you tried to stand up and mash. I mean, you tried to lay every bit of the power you had into it, whether you was a singer or a picker or anything like that, and that was when the real challenge. I had a very stormy relationship with him up until the 90s. I had quit playing music for over 10 years at that point, and I went back down and sort of took up with him. That's where Mr. Painter and I became very acquainted down there during that period of time and everything. But my time with Monroe, I don't remember that kindly old gentleman that some of these guys speak of. It wasn't exactly that way for me. I will tell one story. There should be a little deleted expletive at the end of this. I'll tell y'all a Bill Monroe story and get my part of this over with. This is what got me thrown off of Jim Smith's festival out in Eminence, Missouri a few years ago for this. But we had gone to play at the Florida State Fair. And when we pulled our bus in, we went down under the stadium where we were playing. And most of the time, we just came off the bus, you know, ready to play. We were dressed and everything. We didn't really use a dressing room for anything other than a tune-up room when we would get there, especially when we were in close confines like this. Well, we got off the bus, and I was walking with Mr. Bill, and we hadn't been met by the people who were supposed to take care of us, you know, and show us around. So Mr. Bill walks down the hall here, and he sees a dressing room with a big star on it, and boom, he goes right through the door. Well, George Lindsay, Goober, was the MC of the festivities there at the Orange Bowl all week for the state fair there. And I could see this dressing room was occupied when we got there, but that didn't make no difference to Bill. He just went in, laid his mandolin case down, opened it up, took out his mandolin, started picking. You know, I was fiddling around trying to get a banjo out of the case, and George Lindsay walked in. Well, it's getting to be showtime for him. He's needing to be dressed and everything. And he sort of wanted his room, I got the feeling there. So he walked over and he introduced himself to Mr. Monroe said, "Mr. Monroe, I'm George Lindsay." He said, "Do you know who I am?" And Bill looked at him and said, "No, I don't believe I've ever made your acquaintance before." You know? And George Lindsay said, "Well, do you ever watch Hee Haw?" Bill said, "Well, I don't watch a whole lot of television at all, you know." And Kenny had told me years before that first thing Bill would do when he'd get a new car was bust a radio out of it. He didn't like canned music. He didn't listen to other people. He didn't really need to. All this external influence that came into his band came in through younger people. You know, Earl Scruggs brought bebop into it, or that that rhythm that's got that right. You know, and all these people, it's like Lester Flatt came into the group. You know, he had sung with Charlie, so he knew the Monroe dialect to be able to sing, but basically he was bringing in the crooning singing style of somebody like Bing Crosby for that day, that smooth crooning voice. So all these other influences came into Bill as a result of the music. You know, he could just remain isolated into himself, into his own deal. But I'll get back to Goober here. So, because Bill he didn't listen to a lot of, whether it be TV or radio or anything like that. He didn't listen to canned music. I remember we had a bus driver one time that brought a tape recorder on the bus and to listen while he was driving on, and Monroe disabled the tape recorder. After, I think it was Aldridge that did that he brought it in because Bill didn't want to hear that music while he was up there playing solitaire. You know, he was listening to what's going on in his head, obviously. But anyhow, back to Goober. He's run down the thing with Hee Haw at this point, and he finally looks at Bill and he said, "Well, did you ever see the Andy Griffith Show?" And Mr. Bill said, "No, I don't believe I ever watched that one either." So by this time, this has gone on for about 5 or 6 minutes at this point, and you know, this guy's trying to clear the dressing room so he can get himself together, and he breaks down. Here comes your expletive, and pardon me. But he just finally is so exasperated, he just looks at Bill. He looks at him and he says, "I'm Goober! I'm Goober, damn it! And this is my dressing room, and I need to get ready for my show." So, anyhow, that's part of the Monroe deal with me. Good luck to y'all.
Oh, me. I hadn't heard that one, Butch. Let's go back in to our elder statesman this week. It really ain't that elderly, though. I get to looking around these guys, and I think, well, I used to listen to them on TV when I was a little fella, about that tall, same size I am now, but still that tall. But Bobby Hicks joined the band in 1954.
And I don't know a damn thing is funny.
Come up and talk to us here, Bobby. Bobby Hicks.
I'm serious, Doug. I don't have anything to say that's funny. All this funny stuff happened after I left Monroe's band. What's that?
It don't have to be funny.
Well, it wasn't anything funny. I used to, when we would get to a show date a little bit early, which we did occasionally, guys. He and I would just throw the baseball. He was really into the baseball. And that's about the only thing that I could tell you about him. He was always the elderly gentleman that somebody said he never was. Who was it said that? But I went to work for him when I was 21. I had just turned 21 years old, and he was 42 or 3 or something like that. But he was the elderly gentleman to me at that time, you see. But he always treated me like I was his own son, and I was never treated better by anybody I ever worked for than I was by Bill Monroe. And that's about all I've got to say.
Bobby, you worked those shows that we see now on the classic country with you and Charlie Klein.
Yes.
Tell us a little about how did those come about? I mean,
well, you know, I'm not sure how they came about. I was just told to be there.
I was talking to Gordon Terry, and Gordon said he used to hang around out back, hoping that they would come out and ask him to come in and do something.
Yeah.
And
well,
I wasn't sure whether.
Well, it wasn't that way with me. I was part of the Bluegrass Boys. When they played somewhere, I was there, and that was all there was to that.
What was you traveling on at that point when you first
When I
went
first
with
went to work for him, was 1954, and he had a 1953 Cadillac limousine. Baby blue, Carolina blue, yeah. I'll never forget that car.
We'll have to get Bobby wound up here in a little bit with some other stories. So many times here, one thing that one person will bring up will lead to someone else thinking of something else that happened. And if you think of something else, come back up.
Well, if I think about it, I'll be sure and tell you about it. But I really can't think of anything that I really thought was funny about working with him. He would wear you out, man. You'd come into town and play the Grand Ole Opry, off the stage and in the car, and you was gone. And worked every night of the week. Then you'd be back in on the next weekend to play the Grand Ole Opry, back in the car and gone again. It took me a long time to get to know my way around Nashville because I never was there. So I believe I've used my time up too now.
Get our fiddlers together and play one.
All right. What fiddlers wants to pick one? You want to play one, Tater? Come on up here and wear me out, son. Okay, jump in there. Get all bruised up like I'm going to do.
You know your part.
I believe I do, yeah.
Okay. Intro.
You gonna play the intro?
Yeah.
You're in our boy.
Remember all them good times. You wanna leave this? I wanna hear you smile.
Let's call Robert Boland to come up and talk to us a little bit. Robert was he and Tater was the last two fiddlers in the band, and talk to us a little bit about your time, life and times.
Well, Bobby being one of the first, I guess I was the last fiddle player to play with Bill, about 3.5 years worth. And I don't remember a whole lot very funny either, but you may know what I'm talking about now. No, there was about 6 months there where Bill and I were kind of at odds with one another, but we got straightened out, and I'm really glad that we did because we became friends. But I'll tell a short story having to do with Tater and Bill. Tater, I don't know if Tater remembers this, but I started playing fiddle with Bill. I'm carrying a guitar, but I played fiddle with Bill. And it was on the Opry. I think it was first or second performance on the Opry with Bill. And so we did a couple of numbers out there, and we got off stage and on the side of the stage, and Tater sat down there close to where the announcer is, sat down in a chair, and I walked over to Tater, and Tater said, Robert, do you like bluegrass very much? But I wasn't sure exactly what he meant, what that meant, I thought about it, and, well, yeah, I like it pretty well, and I think it was his way of telling me, of just trying to figure out what I did like and what I was about, and as a musician, because we hadn't worked together really before. And I will say that I came to work for Bill, having played bluegrass, maybe about 75%, I knew kind of what it was about, or 50 to 75%. Well, I learned another 25% at least from Tater about playing the fiddle, because he played bass in the band and I played fiddle. And I'm talking about things like playing with slides and that kind of bluesy kind of sound, and this is the thing that I try to teach to students, and that I learned directly from Tater, and Tater kind of helped to instill that in my playing and my idea, excuse me, of fiddle playing. And I had some of that down, but I think by the time I got done with my 3.5 years of playing with Bill Monroe, I was twice the fiddle player that I was before I ever got with him. Of course, I've learned from all the fiddle players, And, but Tater, I want to thank you for all your help.
Well, you're welcome, Robert. I have to
And Tom was in the band with me too. He knows exactly what I'm talking about. I really wanted to play my own, kind of do my own thing. At that point, I was a guitar player and fiddle player primarily, and didn't really want to go out with anybody before I got the job with Bill. I had just finished a long string of playing with different country artists, and I just really kind of wanted to stick around the house and pick up work where I could in music. And then Bill Monroe's manager, Jim Basir, called me and he said, "Would you like to play fiddle for Bill?" I thought, well, I thought of all the times I had wanted to try to maybe put my stamp, and to see what I could do and see how Bill Monroe would accept what I tried to do on the fiddle with his music. And so I said, well, yeah, sure. I mean, what do I have to do? And he said, well, just come down Monday and we'll just get with Bill. I already had met Bill, and my in-laws at that time were acquainted with Bill. But so we played a couple of numbers, as he called tunes, and I've always called tunes numbers ever since I was with Bill Monroe. But anyway, and that was it. And first tune we played was Sweet Blue-Eyed Darling on the Opry, and then we did the inauguration of President Clinton, which was the first thing. The inauguration might have been the actual first job. But anyway, I'm just glad to be part of this whole business, whole operation. So that's about all I have to say, and I thank you.
Back in '89, I went down to the Opry one night there. Well, it happened to be Bill's 50th anniversary on the Opry. And I wanted to go and take some pictures and things like that. And, of course, I had talked with Bill a time or two prior to that about possibly coming back and playing bass in the band. He had an opening or two. Tater was moving between the bass and the fiddle from time to time. And his elbow, I think, or shoulder was bothering him some and playing the fiddle. And so I just kind of dropped it. So he was pretty happy with the bass there for a while. But this particular night, I walked in and I ran into Blake in the hallway. He said, "You know what's going on?" I said, "Well, no." He says, "Well, Billy Rose just told us a little bit ago that he's going to turn in his notice. He's going to work with Jim and Jesse." And says, are you interested in playing the bass?" I said, "Yes, sir." Walked on around the corner and ran into Tater. And Tater said, "You know what's going on?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "You want the job?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Good." He says, "I'll have somebody to help me drive now." So we go on, and the reason I didn't want to say anything to Bill is, they was going to do an hour special there on TV. It was going to be live off the Opry that night. And Bill's health was pretty fragile at that point in time. And they was pretty much taking care of a lot of the things with the band. And so they went on out and played the hour thing, and I went out and taken pictures and come back. And about that time, Andrea, who was Campbell at the time, Andrea Roberts now, came in the back door of the Opry and said, "Where in the world is Billy Rose?" And we looked around and says, "Well, we're not sure." And one of them said, "He's probably going to turn his notice into Bill." She said, "We can't do that." Jimmy Campbell, who she was married to at the time, was playing fiddle with Jim and Jesse, and they were coming up the interstate, and he had heard Jim and Jesse talking. On Tuesday that week, Jim had hired Raymond McLean to play the banjo. On Thursday, Jesse had hired Billy Rose to play the banjo. And so they called to tell her to get over to the Opry, and so Billy wouldn't turn in his notice. So I got the job, I lost the job, never played the first tune. Blake Williams, you got some stories for us?
Just a few. I'm just amazed how much Doug Hutchins has begun to look like a cross between David Crosby and Audie Blaylock.
I hope they're making better than I am.
Doug has always worked really hard on birthday parties and Bluegrass Boy reunions, and worked real hard on taking care of this elite group of people. And for those of you that never watched Bill Monroe, I'd like to remind everybody he's in the Country Music Hall of Fame, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Songwriters Hall of Fame, and the Bluegrass Hall of Fame. So to have played and worked for him puts you in an elite group, and I'm real proud to be part of that group. I want to say that right up front. Thank you, Raymond McLean and ETSU and all the people that helped put this together. Also, Danny Clark called me about this, and I know he's the one planted the seed about this whole show, so I want to give Danny credit here tonight for that. And Tater Tate is a true legend. I hope he's in the Hall of Fame someday. I was driving down the road thinking of all the people that he worked for through the years. The Bells Brothers and Mac Wiseman, Carl Story, Lester Flatt, Bill Monroe, Wimley Cooper, Red Smiley, Hylo Brown, Jimmy Martin. He recorded all those hit records with Jimmy Martin. I mean, this guy, my problem is I know too much about these people on stage, so I can't tell the whole truth. But I met Tater Tate when he took Paul Warren's place with Lester Flatt in 1978, and I was lucky enough to get to play with Lester the last year of his life. And he said he never thought he could, Lester said he didn't think he could ever replace Paul Warren, but he said when Tater come in, he just fit like a glove. And that was pretty cool. A lot of y'all don't know this about Tater. Tom touched on it a little bit. In 1981, Bill Monroe had cancer surgery. And Tater and Lois found out that Bill Monroe was living out there on the farm by himself, and so they went and got him and brought him over to their house and healed him back to health. That's the kind of people they are. And And when I got to be in Nashville from my trip to Sparta, and we had to leave that night or the next day, or I needed a place to stay, Tater and Lois made their home available to me. So, Miss Lois, I love you for all you did for me through those years. But I'll tell you a few Bill Monroe stories. One of my favorites is we had a chance to play over at the PTL Club when Jim and Tammy Baker had it over in Fort Mill, South Carolina. We went on their live television show, and when we got through, a lady came up to Bill and said, "Mr. Monroe, would you mind staying and playing just a couple of more tunes for our studio audience?" And Bill said, "I'd be glad to." He said, "Does it have to be gospel music?" And she said, "No, some nice secular tunes would be fine." He said, "Oh, no, it'll be good, clean bluegrass." I had the opportunity to travel not only all over the United States with Tater Tate, but we went to Japan a couple of times. And on one particular occasion, me and Bill Monroe and Tater Tate had went to eat breakfast, and that was quite an experience. Bill thought that if you just slowed English down that the Japanese could translate it, but it didn't work. But we were walking back to our room, and these Japanese people were just thick as flies, talking in Japanese and wide open, and me and Tater and Bill was just walking through there a foot taller than anybody, and all at once Bill looked over at me and Tater and said, "You know, you don't hear a lot of cussing over here like you do back in our country." One time, we were heading out on a long trip. It was probably at least 30 days. It involved going all the way to the West Coast and back. And it was sometime in August, and someone had give Bill Monroe a giant sheet cake for his birthday. And there was 5 bluegrass boys and 2 drivers, and I don't know who all, a couple of guests. We needed every seat on the bus, but Bill took this giant cake and put it right in the jump seat by the card table. Somewhere down the way, Wayne Lewis starts talking to Bill about the fact that Bill had always wore his hair long in the back. If you'll notice in his pictures, it was always long and curly. And Bill divulged to us that the reason he wore his hair so long was because he had a knowledge knot. Well, we went and we did all these shows, and this cake, it's starting to crack and dry up, and we wanted to eat some of it, and Bill said, "No, I'm taking it back to Nashville." Somebody had said in it there were butt prints in it. Anyway, on the last day of the tour, all at once, Bill gets up, gets his giant sheet cake, and carries it off to the back of the bus and puts it in his room. Tater said, "Well, looks like that knowledge knot just kicked in." I got to play with Bill for 10 years, and Tater kept me well entertained all the time. He was a funny man and a good-hearted man, and me and Wayne was talking about some of Tater's words. He got upset about a lot of things that were going on at the time. We was having bus trouble and I don't know what all, and Tater said he was just getting fed up with all the haberdashery. But there was plenty of haberdashery in those years for sure. But Tater always, when we went to an airport, he always put his hat in a plastic bag with a rubber band on the end to keep his hat nice and neat. And one day Bill Monroe said, "Why don't you get your hat out and wear it? It would really help you." Tater said, "Well, Bill, I just didn't want to look fictitious." All the bluegrass boys know that when Bill Monroe shut a door, it was going to stay. Bill's room was about halfway down the bus, and in the back was the 4 bunks that the Bluegrass boys slept in, and in the very back of the bus was the restroom. And it was right at the head of the bunks. Anybody went in and out of that restroom, you either smelled it or heard that door shut. About 3 o'clock one morning, I just happened to be awake, and I saw Bill coming down the aisle. And when he shut that door, I think the back end of the bus probably moved at least a couple of inches. I seen a cigarette light up in Tater's bunk. There was nothing but a red glow coming out of his bunk, no lights on back there. And in that glow of that cigarette, he looked over and he saw I was awake. He said, "You know, when I get back to Nashville, I'm going to start looking real hard." But anyway, I really appreciate this man, and I love him a lot, and I'm thankful I got to pick with him. You know, one of the things a lot of people don't know about Tater is that he had a little bit of a hearing problem. Normal conversation was hard for Tater to hear, but he could hear an instrument out of tune in the next county. And Tater was one of the pioneers of the double-stop fiddle playing, as many of y'all students know, and I just love him to death, and I want y'all to pray for Tater and Lois, and I thank y'all for letting me be a part of this, and God bless Tater and Lois Tate. Thank y'all.
Oh, RC, good buddy Frank Buchanan's not doing too well down in North Carolina. We might have to put one of these together down somewhere in Maggie Valley somewhere this summer, so have you enjoyed yourself so far?
Here's a tune I've been.
Doug, hold your hand up there and show the folks your right hand. That's why Doug's not picking. What do you say is wrong with him, Blake? What's wrong with Doug's hand?
He's got corporate tunnel.
Fellas, if I can get some fiddle players and a guitar player up here, something that everybody should know, and if you folks know it out here, why don't you sing along? I've started doing this lately on some of my programs as a banjo instrumental, and it turned out to be a fairly gratifying thing when I do it. Oh boy, that was good, wasn't it? Doug, let me borrow your right hand.
I come to the garden alone, while the dew is still on the roses, and the voice I hear falling on my ear, the Son of God discloses, and he walks with me and he talks with me, and he tells me I am his own, and the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known.
Thank you all.
We're going to ask Wayne Lewis to come up and sing one first, and then we're going to take about a exactly 20-minute break, because I've been watching a few folks out there, and I'm not sure where the bathroom's at here, but they don't want to leave, and I hate to put people through misery. So we're going to take exactly a 20-minute break after Wayne sings whatever he's going to sing. Then we're going to come back, and Wayne and Tater's going to talk, and then I don't know, we'll pick a little bit, but you know, it all ain't done for sure.
We're going to roast Tater.
We're going to roast Tater.
Roast Tater.
Okay. Hadn't thought of it that just the way that I thought of it, but. Okay. Jack Kincaid. Normally we at our reunions we haven't used a mandolin picker or a tenor singer because ours is resting up in Rosine, Kentucky. But Wayne's going to take us into a 20-minute break here, and then he's going to come back, and he and Tater's going to lay some words on it.
Yes, we will. Jack Kincaid, where'd he go? Where'd Kincaid go? Oh, he went that way?
It's too low.
Callaway went that way.
Sing that first verse long, then.
Yeah, Dan. Dan.
Okay, well, Kincaid went to grab his mandolin now. Oh, okay, good. You know, we'd been on a tour out through the West Coast, and we were driving coming back, and Tater and I, we would switch back and forth on the driving a lot, but for some reason, me and the chief, or the chief and I, you know who I'm referring to, we were not on speaking terms right at that moment. I can't remember what caused the incident at that time, but I'm sure it was a good reason that he wasn't talking to me. So when he quit talking to me, I refused to help Tater drive. I said he'll drive till he gets tired and we'll park. And the bus broke down, the air conditioner. The factory air went out. Okay, and then all the roof mounts went out. The big unit underneath went out. So tempers were short, and we had stopped someplace to eat, and Tater said, when I get back to Nashville, I'd like to take all the little fiddles that I can find and bust them up into kindling and pile them up, and then get all the bass fiddles I can find and pile them on top of them and have a bonfire. So that almost made me think that right at that moment he was disgusted. But he was always smiling, just like he is now. All right, here's one called My Sweet Blue-Eyed Darling.
You're my sweet blue-eyed darling, and my love belongs to you. All I ask, you my darling, love me good and be true. Days come and go, and I still love you, and I see your smiling face. Tell me, love, that you need me, and no one gonna take your place. You're my sweet blue-eyed darling, and my love belongs to you. All I ask, you my darling, to love me good and be true. And today I need an answer, and I want to hear you say you don't belong to another, and in my arms you're gonna stay. You're my sweet blue-eyed darling, and my love belongs to you. All I ask, you my darling, to love me good and be true. You're my sweet blue-eyed darling, and my love belongs to you. All I ask, my darling, love me good and be true. My darling, love me good and be true.
All right, thank you.
We're going to be back at 5 minutes till 5. Check out the guys. A lot of the guys have got some wares over there. We've got some of the Howdy Folks Howdy books over here. There's $6 a piece. A bunch of the stories from our first year. Got a few of the Bill Monroe posters that Gibson did for Bill back in '89. They go for about $15 on eBay, but anybody wants one tonight, we'll have them over here for $5 a piece. It's all going to Tater. Everybody went out and seen it snowing and building a snowman out there. You never can tell.
It is big flakes now.
It is?
Yeah.
Good. Maybe I won't have school tomorrow.
Yeah. It's just Doug and Tom and I. We'll be the Shed House Trio. Art, Bart, and Fargo.
But has everybody had a pretty good time so far this afternoon? One of my goals is at some point to be able to do a tour of this with the guys and do it, say, a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and a Sunday. You know, pretty much like we used to do the old tours. You'd go run around from here to there and go into a place, you know, perfect little auditorium right here. traveling around a little bit. And of course, the thing of it is, Bill Monroe's Bluegrass Boys, there's so many of them still actively performing out there. And so it's difficult to get a whole bunch of them together on any one specific date. What do you got?
How many of you here know that the postage is fixing to go up? Has everybody heard that? Going up, what, 2 cents, is it? From 39 to 41. Tell you all a little story about Doug. Doug is a school teacher, but he's not very much of a businessman. A bunch of years ago, when postage was 33 cents, Doug had $10,000 that didn't nobody know he had. So he invested that whole $10,000 in 33-cent postage stamps when he heard they was going up to 35.
There's first-class postage.
He's still using them 33-cent stamps.
Yeah, but don't have to put with just a few of them ones with it. The guys will filter back as they can get away there. Let me have Wayne Lewis to come up. Wayne, he and Tom spent the last 20 years on the left-hand side of the stage with the Bluegrass Boys, singing songs and playing tunes and playing pranks and otherwise just having a good old time.
Between the two of them, they had a monopoly going, didn't they?
They sure did. But these two guys with 10 years apiece, Blake with 10 years. How many years do you have altogether, Butch?
4, probably.
4. I was counting it up. The best I could count it up yesterday, there'd be about 72 years worth of experience. you remember all 72 of those years, huh? But you put all the guys together with Bobby and Tater, about 72 years of experience as Bluegrass Boys on the stage here today. So
Can we kick it back off with another fiddle tune?
let's do that. Let's do that. Let's.
Bass string for us. Wayne, Blake. Yeah. This is a fiddle tune that Mr. Monroe asked me to play almost every time I was around him. It's one that Clayton McMitchin recorded with him back many years ago. It's called the Back Up and Push.
Oh, back up and push.
Yeah.
Randy there. Talk to us a little bit there, Wayne, about some of your times. You can tell things on Tater right now that you can't tell when he's out here because he'll throw things at you.
He'll hear me back there and he'll hit me anyway. I know Tater Tate. You know, some of y'all probably know this, but Tater Tate recorded back in the early 60s on Rural Rhythm. Was you? But my brother, one time my brother called and he said, I have just picked up a fiddle album that is outstanding. And I said, who is it? He said, it's a guy named Tate. And he said, you've got to come over and listen to this. And I went over and he started playing it. And I said, I know that guy. I know him. And he played stuff on those Rural Rhythm albums. I think there was 3 of them. If I'm not mistaken, there's 3 of those Rural Rhythm. But I went out and bought them all. And I still have them. And I have told Tater different times about listening to him back in those days, and he played that double stop. And he ain't quit. He just got better. That's exactly what it is. But I just thought I'd throw that out there. Some of you might like to just get a hold of it and hold on to that little bit of bluegrass trivia.
You know, a lot of that stuff has been re-released. I don't know whether those have or not, but he did a lot of Canadian fiddle tunes and did one of waltzes as well.
Yes, he did. But the Rural Rhythm albums are the ones that I really sit down and listen to those, and he hadn't been topped. I know that, in that old double stop style that he plays. Buddy Spiker told me once, he said there was a guy from up in Virginia that I learned the double stop from. He said, we spent a lot of time in Charleston, West Virginia, and Huntington in hotel rooms. And that was the man he was talking about, was Tater Tate. He said, that's who I learned it from, was Tater Tate. So I mentioned it to Tater once, and he said, yeah, I remember we spent some time up there in the winter when we couldn't work and we just played. But that was my first experience at really appreciating what he did. And I haven't stopped. I've had a lot of fun with him over the years. We spent a lot of time together in the Bluegrass Boys. And Tater and I would always find something humorous. No one else thought it was funny, but Tater and I would always think it was funny. Of course, a lot of times it was like at home when I was little, and Monroe would look at me a few times, and I knew it was time to go to bed. Keep your mouth shut and go to bed, Wayne. But the song I sang earlier, the Sweet Blue-Eyed Darling, I'd been with Bill just a short time. The bus broke down. No one's going to say the Bluegrass Breakdown. That was the bus. Every one of them was called the Bluegrass Breakdown because they all broke down. But we were traveling up through Virginia, and we had 2 station wagons. Bill and Kenny Baker and myself, we was in one of the old station wagons. I think it was an Oldsmobile. And Randy Davis and Bob Black was in the other station wagon. I don't know why Monroe would make me and Baker ride with him. I could guess. Sounds like if this guy gets back up, he'll be telling why, won't he? But anyway, we was coming up through there, and Monroe said, "Remember this melody." And he started humming and playing on the mandolin. And then he would say, let me write this down. And he'd write some words down. And he'd say, now hum this melody and then sing these words. And we worked from along south of Bristol here all the way up into around Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And when we got up there, the song Sweet Blue-Eyed Darling was finished. And it wasn't too long after that we recorded it. Turned out to be a real good song for Bill and the Bluegrass Boys, and I was just glad I was a part of it because right in that time frame that I was there, he was writing a lot of good songs. And I'm just thankful, I thank the good Lord, that I was there to at least get to sing on them. I don't know if I helped him any in singing, but I was just thankful that I was there to sing on the songs because they were good songs and they got a lot of recognition in the bluegrass field.
You being an old farm boy too, you spent some time with him out on the farm, and he talked about the old days.
Oh yes. We when I first went to work with Bill, I grew up on a farm in eastern Kentucky, up around Sandy Hook, and then Dad sold out up there, and we moved to Ohio and bought a farm. And I was not a stranger to building fence, ringing hogs, and that's another story too. But
that's in the book.
yeah. But I grew up and I had to work on the farm. I've looked at the back end of an old mule many a day, plowing them new grounds and stuff. And I don't want to go back to it, but if times get bad enough, I'm one of the guys that could go back on them mountains and make a living, I think. I know how to raise taters and grub out of new ground. But Bill, he asked me one day, he said, how would you like for me and you to get in the cattle business? I said, well, Bill, I don't have a lot of money to put into that. He said, I'll put all the money into it. I'll buy the truck. You go out and pick out the truck. I'll buy the cattle truck. I'll buy the livestock, and you just help me take care of it, and we'll move it from farm to farm. At that time, he had about 3 or 4 different farms. And we would go to stockyards and buy cattle and stuff and buy hogs. And Bill was just like a second dad to me. Of course, my dad would get mad at me a lot, so it didn't bother me too much when Bill would get mad at me. It was just like being at home. I remember one time Kenny Baker and I had been working downtown some at night in Nashville, and Bill wanted me out there at the farm at 5 o'clock to load up some cattle. And they had just run off a new batch of Coca-Cola, I think, because it was real strong stuff that night. And my head was bigger than this guitar, I swear. And I had not filled the truck up with gas. I hadn't done anything the day before. And Monroe, he got a little perturbed at me. And he had a 2x4 about 6 foot long. And I was sitting there in the driver's seat. And he started pounding on top of that truck cab with that 2x4, saying, how does that feel? With tears in my eyes, I still couldn't tell him how it felt. But I enjoyed the time with Bill. He and we had a lot of ups and downs. We had a lot of differences because I was like 33 years old when I went to work for him, and I had my mind set on what I thought was the right way for bluegrass music to go, and he already had his mind set on how it was going to go. So we had a lot of differences. But I will say one thing, that when I came out of the school of Bill Monroe Bluegrass Music, I had learned the way it was supposed to be. And that's about all I got to say. One thing I would like to say, I was with Bill through the early 80s with all the sickness. Some of it we had talked about, where Bill had gone to stay with Lois and Tater, but I was with him through all the cancer. I was with him through the heart problems. I was with him through so many illnesses. And he would be on that bus and he would look like he was dying. But when we walked off that bus and stepped on the stage, it looked like the Bill Monroe from 20 years before. He never let anything get him down, and that was something that I learned from Bill, is you don't step back, you keep stepping forward. And I think anyone that worked with him learned that. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Wayne.
Add one quick note to something that he didn't tell you. Like you said, he and Bill went into business there together. They bought a big old bull. His name was Bobo, best I remember. Had this big old bull, and they had a 4-acre tract out there, and it was divided into 4 equal acres, you know. And part of Wayne's job was every morning he'd go out there and get this bull, and he would shift it over to this other field. Next morning, he'd shift it over to this one. Next morning, shift it over. So out of all of the bluegrass boys up here, Wayne is the biggest bull shifter of all of us. I just thought y'all ought to know that.
Oh, man. Well, now, we have talked to about everybody except the man of the hour. And Mr. Tater, would you come up and join us here, sir? And would you take care of our other stuff right over there? You know, Tater has been mighty good to come out and play with us. But behind every great musician, there's always a lady. And it was Tom's wonderful idea that we thank Lois for letting you to come out and play with us.
I appreciate
David,
her for letting me too.
Would you? We have something here for Lois.
Oh,
This ain't for you. Oh, yeah. I love you, but I ain't gonna help buy flowers for you.
And David's going to go out and take and present that. And the reason I asked David to do it is because David and Tater worked together not only with Red Smiley in the group in the early 60s, or
Right.
mid-60s there.
Yep.
And also, I want to give you something here. The governor of the great state of Kentucky wanted to make you a Kentucky colonel.
oh man. Thank you.
And said the next time they invade the state of Tennessee, you're the chief general.
Does that mean if I go through Kentucky speeding that I won't get a ticket?
No, but if you call the governor, he might he'll pay for it.
Thank you, Doug. Yeah, I'll lay that right back there with my fiddle.
Wayne says that don't work. Give Miss Lois a wonderful hand down here for the flowers. And we appreciate you so much.
I knew her before she was Tater Tate's wife.
Huh?
I said I knew her. I met her before she was Tater Tate's wife.
Oh, you did? How about that?
I rode with you to take her home.
I'll tell you what, I'm lucky to have had my wife so many years. We've been through quite a bit of rough stuff. She got hit in Nashville real hard. It rear-ended her car and set up a problem called RSD, which maybe a lot of you folks know what that is and everything, but it kind of ruined her getting around some. And but we've still had a good marriage, and I'm proud of her.
There you go.
Thank you. But I couldn't really think of any funny tales to tell. They told about everything I knew. But one time we was overseas, and I'm not sure which. I don't remember what continent we'd been to. But we were coming back home on the plane, and I guess Bill got bored. He he was one of those big planes, you know, that had the TV in the middle and all that stuff. I mean, he's a big dude. And Bill got him mounted off his case, and he started walking around all the halls up and down through there, and he'd stop at every row, and he'd lean over there, he'd peek for everybody. I don't know if half the people knew what he's even doing or not. But we got off the plane. Well, I tell you what, I was up there in the rear part of the plane, and as he'd come down this way, I would come on the way back yonder behind him. I didn't think I was in on that. But anyway, when we come off the plane, I said, "Well, Bill," I said, "you entertained the people on the plane, didn't you?" "Well, you see, they need entertainment too. We're traveling now." So, but just things like that. I don't know how many of you people know Bill Monroe personally, but we were playing a new festival up in Virginia, someplace between here and Roanoke, I can't remember, but way up on the mountain. And we got the bus up a little piece, but the rest of the way we had to go on horse and wagon. And Bill and I was standing there pretty close together waiting on the group to come off that was playing, and we was going on next. And I looked up there, and boy, the most beautiful moon you really ever seen. Just looked really big. And I told Bill, I said, you know, Bill, I said, that's a beautiful big moon up there tonight, isn't it? He thought a couple of seconds. He said, yes, sir. That's because it's closer down here to us, you see. But that's just things like that. It's very corny, and I'm not funny, so I'm going to turn that comedian stuff back over to somebody else. Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate you all coming out. God bless each and every one of you. I appreciate everything. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. We're going to ask Tim to come on up first here, and then we'll finish up with maybe a couple of instrumentals, and Raymond's working on something right there as well.
Well, thank y'all having a good time this afternoon here at the Picking Porch. I'll make this brief. This is one of the displays we have downstairs at the Mountain Music Museum, and folks asked for a long time. This is of the Bailey Brothers in 1950 over North Carolina. It's one of the exhibits, and folks kept saying, that looks like Tater Tate. So Tater just verified that in the dressing room back here. That's him with the Bailey Brothers in 1950. And if you look through our museum downstairs, you'll find Tater Tate all over the place with numerous pickers, numerous bands. So we ask you to visit down there. And every Thursday, to support our museum, we pass the buckets. We don't charge admission for our picking porch here. We don't charge admission for the museum. We depend on donations. We're going to pass the buckets today, but we're not going to give the money that we pay. And I know you gave $10 to get in here, but I guess we're going to double dip, and we're going to do it for Tater Tate. We've got the bucket brigade back here, and I'm going to ask you to give again. How many of y'all ever had anybody sick in your home, having to have medical bills, things like that? Tater's got that in his home right now. And I'm going to ask you to give again, if you would, if you can. If you can't do it, that's fine. But we're going to get the bucket brigade to go around. If you can dip in your pocket one more time, I think we've raised about $2,000 today, plus other donations around $800, but we can do better than that, don't you think? I mean, that's good. That's good. Give yourselves a hand for what you've done. But as the buckets come around, let's give to Tater in his time of need right here, because when you're sick and you have medical bills and things like that going on, you need help, and you're his family. We're all the Bluegrass family, aren't we, Doug?
That's it.
So as the buckets come around, let's give to Tater Tate again. God bless you. Thank you for being here today. That's all I have to say.
Appreciate you. We appreciate Tim and Raymond and all the guys. They're trying to get a quartet together right back here, and I think on that 4 of them get to sing. And then we'll have we got it together?
I got an announcement to make, Doug.
All right.
Tim White there that was just up here is a big supporter of bluegrass music, and he's having a bluegrass festival at the Davis Valley Winery in Grosse Close, Virginia. And that's coming up June 28th through the 30th. So it's a brand new festival. So we really appreciate the work that Tim White does supporting bluegrass in this part of the country. And also our band, Williams and Clark Expedition, will be performing with Rhonda Vincent and Nothing Fancy in Marion, Virginia at the Lincoln Theater November 16th. So y'all come out. It's going to be a PBS television taping. So y'all come out and be involved in that too. Thank you, Doug.
Appreciate it. There's one other question I want to ask, and I want to ask that to Tater. Y'all, you got your quartet together, going to do your tune? Come here, I need to ask you a question. How did you get named Tater?
Well, it goes back a while. I was working for Kaz Walker down in Knoxville. Down with, I don't know what year it was. And this was Kaz doing his own MCing down there on the area, you know, and everybody in the world listened to him. So, it could get our TV down there. And he got up one morning, he talked kind of funny. He said, "Now let's have up Clarence Tate." He said, "Let's put a R on that and call him Tater." So everybody, like I said, everybody tuned into that show back in those days. And we worked in Maynardsville that night, and we got up there and everybody started calling me Tater. And that's where it started, and that's where it stayed. So that's crazy, but I never did like Clarence too much anyway.
He's got another name too.
Raymond and his group's going to come up and join us, and then we're going to take and feature Tater Tate. And how did that get started with Bill? Do you know?
How what?
When Bill
Oh, no, he did that. He wouldn't used to call me Tater. He called me Clarence.
Oh, he did?
Yeah. Till I started working professionally with him. I'm going to try to do this song. I told my wife I'd love to do it. The only one thing, my voice is not good, and I can't go down on the low part like I
do it as best you can.
Had been doing in the past, so I'd have to go back up to some higher notes, but I'd still like to sing it with them.
Do it.
And it's, I don't know who's going to do it with. It's a beautiful life.
Jack's still around?
Hey, Jack
Tater Kincaid.
Yeah, Jack Kincaid.
Come on, Jack.
You can whistle your part on the mandolin.
Roller skates, come on out here.
Well,
yeah, Tater students, come on up and join with us here.
What are we looking for, a tenor and baritone? Or?
There's
plenty of baritones up here.
Yeah, we're working on getting Jack up to be a tenor there.
Oh. There we're going. Let's give all these little ladies and folks a big hand here. They're they were students out at the college with me, and I don't like to refer as students. I'd just rather say folks or people. They're fine folks. And looks like we're going to get a little good background on this song. So, everybody ready? Okay.
Who's gonna kick? Okay.
Okay, everybody ready? Okay, we'll try to do one titled "A Beautiful Life." Thank you.
Bobby Hicks. Stand up for that Tater Tate. C. A Beautiful Life. Beautiful. C, you said. C. Each day I'll do a golden deed.
A golden deed.
By helping those who are in need. My life on earth.
My life on earth
is but a span. And so I'll do
the best I can. Life's the evening sun is sinking low. A few more days. And I must go
to meet the
deeds
that I have done. Where there would be
no setting sun.
To be a child
of God each day.
My light will shine
along the way.
I'll sing His praise
while
the ages roll,
and
strive to
help some troubled soul. Life's the evening sun sun
Last evening sun
is sinking low.
is sinking low.
A few more days,
A few more days,
and I must go
and I must go to meet the deed
to meet the deed
that I have done.
that I have done,
Where there will be
no setting sun.
We're ready to do it. Yes, we're Tom, you
the only life that will endure is one that's kind and good and pure. And so for God, I'll take my stand.
I'll take my stand.
Each day I'll
Each day I'll
lend a helping hand.
Each day I'll do
Last evening sun
is sinking low.
is sinking low.
A few more days,
A few more days,
and I must go
and I must go to meet the deed
to meet the deed
that I have done.
that I have done,
Where there will be
no setting sun.
no setting
I tried, I couldn't reach down. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'd like to ask Tim White now to come and say something. There are a few people who'd like to say something. James Allen Shelton would like to say something quickly. Jack Tottle and one of the students, and Fred Painter, if he'd like to say something very brief. Jack's right here. Jack, come ahead.
Well, surely everything good has been said about Tater that a person could say. I think all I could do is reinforce what a wonderful experience it's been for everybody at East Tennessee State University who's involved with Bluegrass to have Tater on the faculty there teaching fiddle, for the students to learn from somebody who has the kind of depth of experience and musical gift that Tater has. He's also one of those people that doesn't tell you about his achievements. He lets you find out for yourself, and somehow in the world of professional music, that's kind of refreshing. So again, I'd just like to thank Tater for all of his great work with our students at East Tennessee State.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Raymond. Everybody else involved in this, thank you very much. And all the people were too. God bless you, and I hope all of you have a great year. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Tater. And here's Jessica Ball. Jessica would like to say something on behalf of all your students at ETSU. Jessica, what would you like to say?
Well, it was an honor to get to take lessons with Tater. I was lucky enough to be there his first semester there, and I got to be his very first fiddle student through the program. And let me tell you, I was terrified. My first lesson, I walk in, Jack Tottle takes me down to the room, and I just remember Jack going, "Well, play something for him." And like everything that I had ever learned just went out of my mind. I did not know what to do, but Tater's not a scary person at all. And I learned a lot from him, and he's just been a big influence on me, and he's a good man, and I love him. So.
Well, thank you. We love you too. You tell your mother and daddy hi.
Oh, we will.
Love them too.
Fred Painter.
Well, this is one man I don't know anything negative to say about. He's always been a gentleman. He's been a true friend. I've never heard Bill Monroe say one negative thing about him in all these years. And my wife and I, we were going to move down to Bill Monroe's, the house just beyond his. Bill wanted us there, and he wanted me to be his road manager, and he wanted my wife to run the office and things. My mother got real bad off, it didn't. But my wife had gone down and looked for a job, and she was down there for 2 weeks. Lois and Tater would not let her stay anywhere but at their house. They took good care of her, they treated her, and this is one of the finest people I've ever met in my life.
Thank you,
and
Bruce.
here's
Thank you.
another one right over here. But,
Thank you, brother.
but we love them.
James Allen Sheldon.
Well, I'd just like to say that I grew up in the same community as Tater Tate. He was probably raised up there in probably the 1940s, and I was raised up there in about the 1970s. But where I come from, this man right here was a legend in Yuma, Virginia.
There's some houses up through there now, ain't it?
Yeah, we get the Opry about Wednesday night now. But anyway, this man here inspired me. I knew if somebody could make it from down that part of the country and make it out and make a living playing bluegrass music, that I stood a chance doing it too. And later on down the years, I guess I met Tater the first time the weekend that he went to work with Lester Flatt. I saw him play fiddle with Lester Flatt one night, and the next night I think Tater had to go play a show with somebody else, and Marty Stewart filled in on fiddle. And then the Saturday night, here come Tater back, and they just switched around all weekend. And then later on, when Tater was with Bill Monroe, he always greeted me with a smile and a handshake. And for that, I'm always in your debt. And I appreciate all you've done and the way you've carried yourself as a professional and as a gentleman all these years. And
Well, thank you, man. And I appreciate you working with Ralph, too. But what happened on that Mason and Marty coming in, I had some contracts back with the Shenandoah Cutups. If you remember, we had the Shenandoah Cutups, Red Smiley group there.
Right.
And I had some contracts I had to fill with them, so when I got those done with, why, I was with Flatt regular then.
Yeah.
So that's why they come back.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tater Tate. Thank you. Special thank you to all the bluegrass boys that came. Thank you to Doug Hutchins. Thank you to Tim White, to the original committee that got together, Danny Clark, Sarah Needham, Dan Boner, J.P. Mathis. We thank you all, and good night.